Stormwater runoff is one of the Chesapeake Bay's largest and most persistent sources of pollution. As development spreads, rain that once soaked into forests and fields now rushes across roads, rooftops, and parking lots. It picks up dirt and contaminants, then funnels that pollution into waterways.
WaterLoop.
Could you talk about how stormwater is such a challenge for the Chesapeake?
So when you talk about stormwater, you are talking about every construction site, every industrial parking lot, all of these cumulative land use practices where, you're talking about, in the aggregate, massive amounts of water flow. And it's across all these different land uses and land types. When it comes into contact with, frankly, mismanaged construction sites, or mismanaged industrial impervious surfaces, anything, think of all the pavement out there. When these things are mismanaged and they don't have the appropriate best management practices implemented on those sites, you have excess pollution.
Across Maryland, construction sites are supposed to follow strict erosion and sediment control rules. But when those rules are ignored or enforcement falls behind, even a single site can damage a waterway. One example is the Ridgely's Reserve development on the Gunpowder River. To understand the stakes, you have to understand the river, and nobody knows it better than Gunpowder Riverkeeper Theo Legador.
Tell me about the Gunpowder River. Just describe it to me. The place, the water, the watershed.
The Gunpowder spans 53 miles of river length, has 217 miles of tributaries or small streams feeding into it, and starts up along the York and Adams County line in Pennsylvania and falls to Carroll, Baltimore, and Harford County until it reaches the tidal basin. The Gunpowder River is the fourth largest freshwater input into the Chesapeake Bay. It's host to 26 species of finfish that are recreationally and commercially important. And it's a place where folks come as far up from Crisfield to crab in the fall. We are effectively at the end of the pipe at mile 53 here, which means that anything that happens upriver or up the watershed is going to negatively impact water quality downstream.
When more than 100 acres were cleared for the Ridgely's Reserve development, stormwater pollution to the Gunpowder escalated. David Reed saw just how much sediment was pouring into the water.
The local project that we worked on and supported the Riverkeeper for was Ridgely's Reserve. And when they had major rain events, particularly in the early stages of that development, you had so much sediment coming off of that site that you could see the sediment plume in this river going out into the estuary from satellite imageries. That is, you could see it from space.
I understand that there is a specific development very nearby here that has, threatened the Gunpowder with pollution and with challenges. What's happened there?
We've seen a tremendous amount of sedimentation or sediment pollution into this basin over the past 4 years as that development has started, and over 200 failed inspections that the state inspectors have logged that have said the development is simply not keeping up with the environmental controls on the property. With the transport of sediments, let's call it muddy water or polluted runoff, thematically, we lose light. And when we lose light, we lose grass. They're no longer getting the light they need to sustain their ecosystem, and we've lost around 1,200 acres of submerged aquatic vegetation that is the nursery ground for these 26 species of finfish. It's where the crabs live.
As problems mounted and enforcement lagged, the Gunpowder Riverkeeper and the Chesapeake Legal Alliance stepped in.
When it comes to Ridgely's Reserve and the Gunpowder, what's the legal solution?
Riverkeepers work a little differently than most nonprofits. So we tend to start at education. We move into outreach, but quickly into advocacy. And litigation is the last step. So it's not a hammer. It's something where we've exhausted all of those other actions or remedies. and we move into litigation to right a wrong or to bring some fairness to the decision-making process. In the case of Ridgely's Reserve, Chesapeake Legal Alliance has given us tremendous capacity through their pro bono counsel that are expert in these matters to make sure that a small organization like Gunpowder Riverkeeper not only has a seat at the table, but can basically influence decisions related to how sites will be managed and how they will be enforced, and also how they'll be corrected.
Part of that work meant examining how stormwater permits are supposed to function and where they broke down.
The permitting system under which a construction project happens is a construction stormwater permit. And so a lot goes into that. You have to have erosion and sediment control. You have to have best management practices implemented around these sites. There are inspections of these sites, and there are stages where there is supposed to be accountability within that. And, look, the agency does a great job. They are understaffed. It's also very difficult for them to go to all of these sites, make their inspections, and then anytime you have an inspection violation to implement those. That is part of our job as well, is to really put pressure on these agencies to say, look, when you have problematic inspections, it can't just be a paperwork violation where it goes into a file. You have to act on it. Otherwise, you have what we had here, which is these cumulative series of violations and noncompliance with these practices.
The hope is that legal action would push state regulators towards stronger action on stormwater pollution to the gunpowder and beyond.
So I think a win for us would be to have a lot more recognition at the state level as to the impacts of these large-scale developments. Courts are typically siding with us, and it's because we're careful in our approach, and we don't use litigation as a hammer. We use it as a tool to make sure that water quality and communities are protected.